Coming up on Smart Tech today, Matthew Casanelli is out, but don't worry, I've got Dan Moren joining me. We talk about his smart home setup, and we talk about a lot of news, including Logitech's Bolt technology. We talk about the Apple Watch Series 7's sleep tracking features, and every time Tim Cook had something to say about augmented reality, plus so much more. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Welcome to Smart Tech Today, where we explain the exciting, dynamic, and, well, sometimes confusing subject that is the Internet of Things. I am Micah Sargent, and typically I would be joined by my co-host Matthew Casanelli, but today I am joined by a co-host of mine from another show known as Clockwise, and the person, that co-host, is known as Dan Moren. Welcome to the show, Dan.
It's so good to be here, Micah. I am the person that is the co-host of that other show with you. That's me. That is I. Sorry.
Good. Confirmed.
I am they.
I am you, and he or we. I don't remember how it goes. We are he. There's a walrus involved. That's all I know.
It's very confusing.
It's all very confusing, but and frankly, so is the Internet of Things, which is what we're talking about today. I did want to kick off the show with a little bit of follow-up. So you'll have to sort of join us on this little ride here, Dan. Last week, Matthew Casanelli and I were talking about some new Logitech stuff that was in the works, including a Logitech Dock that doubled as a speakerphone. And so really great device for working in an office or even working from home with a work computer, where you've got that dock on your desk and you can plug in all of your stuff in the back of it and then one cable to your computer. But then also it is this really great speakerphone that you can use to answer calls for Zoom or what have you. And you don't have to work with one of these. For folks who are listening, I just lifted my microphone onto the screen and it does all that magic for you. So one of the things that we had a question about, though, was whether it also served as a means of, I just thought of seize the means of production, but whether it works as a means of connecting some of your Logitech accessories to the computer. And they talked about Logitech Bolt, but we didn't get a chance to really get into Logitech Bolt. So today, I thought we could talk about that a little bit. Digital Trends has a piece about Logitech Bolt, which is essentially, the simple way to look at it is, in an office environment, if you, as the sort of person in charge of giving everybody these devices, so IT or whomever that happens to be, if Dan buys all of his employees Logitech keyboards and mice, and then the office gets filled up with people who have Logitech keyboards and mice, the signal starts to be an issue because you have devices that are not knowing which ones they're supposed to communicate with. And that even goes as far as with one of Logitech's own receivers, because they have these really cool universal receivers where you plug one in, you can pair both your keyboard and your mouse to it, and in some cases, some of the other devices. So what Logitech Bolt aims to do, I guess they call it the Logi Bolt, is it is a new version, a special flavor, if you will, of Bluetooth Low Energy that helps with the problem of devices not communicating with their proper computer and running into issues with signal overlap. So Logibolt is just a technology for trying to make performance of wireless keyboards and mice better. And I think that's great, especially for, again, anyone who's in an environment where they have multiple devices. I think that's where it's particularly helpful. But I imagine, Dan, you working from home, me doing most of my work from home, we don't really run into issues with Bluetooth keyboards. I don't know what
really an issue.
Yeah. What kind of keyboard do you use? Are you a clicky keyboard person, or do you have a special typewriter keyboard since you're a writer?
Yes, a special. I use a typewriter and then I scan all my paper into my computer.
OCR, baby.
Yeah, artisan. I use a Magic Keyboard and a Magic Trackpad, honestly, because they're the things that I like. I tried switching to a clicky keyboard a little while ago. I bought a Keychron and I used it for a couple of weeks, and I was like, you know what? I remember when I had to use these keyboards, and I remember I didn't like them, so I switched back. Especially because, I mean, Micah, you and I both do a lot of podcasts, and I can't type quietly on it when I'm like, oh, I need to look something up. It's like clonk, clonk. So I don't like that. And then on the mouse side, I've been a trackpad person basically forever, because once I started using laptops that had trackpads on them, I couldn't go back to mice. I just always found it like more aggravating, more annoying when I was trying to mouse around all the time. Whereas trackpad, especially when you go back and forth a lot, like you go back and forth between a desktop and a laptop with a trackpad, and you're like, why am I using a mouse here when I could be using all the great gestures, especially on the, on the Mac side? Why would I sacrifice all those great gestures by switching to a mouse? So I'm a Magic Trackpad person.
Yep. I use both. I have my Magic Mouse here and then the Magic Trackpad below it, because there's a specific place where I use the mouse, and that's mostly if I'm doing, which I don't do so much of anymore, because we don't edit clockwise, but that's what I mostly use it for, was editing, because I just felt the precision was nice. So when I'm doing some Photoshop stuff, I will use the mouse, but for everything else, I love the trackpad. But those use Apple's sort of, I mean, it's Bluetooth, but all of these companies kind of roll their own flavors. And I don't know about you, but I had some issues with Bluetooth on my MacBook for a while. And so I ended up buying a Lightning to USB-C cable that's a right angle cable. And I just have had the keyboard plugged in ever since into my CalDigit TS3 Plus. And that's the only way that I'm able, or I should say, I don't know now, because that thing may have been fixed, but I've not had a reason to unplug it since then. Just because I had some issues with Bluetooth.
I've seen that too. I think Apple's Bluetooth stack on the Mac has always been a little problematic. So I'll get to these things where every once in a while I'll just decide, like, I'm going to disconnect and reconnect like a million times in a row. And I'll be like, why? And the only way to deal with it is, basically plug it in hardwired with a cable for at least a little while and let it sort of remember, like, oh yeah, this is the computer I wanted to work with. So I keep a Lightning cable plugged into my iMac for just that purpose. And also because, charging. But I usually try to stay wireless as much as possible because I just don't like the clutter.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I wish that I didn't have to. I mean, and I couldn't even use this at all if I wanted
to charge it. Yeah,
to plug it in.
I do have a Magic Mouse. I used to use a Mac Mini connected to a TV, and I would use a Magic Mouse for that, because sometimes you'd be like, oh, I need to actually do stuff with it. So I have one sitting around here somewhere, but I found it when I moved recently and was like, oh, this still has batteries in it. That probably should. I haven't used this in years. I should probably take the batteries out and store that away somewhere.
Leaking out inside, that would be bad. Well, let's, we've covered Logi Bolt there, but I do want to move on to talk about some new announcements. I think if Matthew was here, we'd be talking a lot about Apple, the Apple event and everything that was announced. However, Matthew's not here. So while the cat's away, this cat is going to play. No, I'm kidding. I want to talk specifically about one thing that was announced at the Apple event, because I think that it has the most tie to smart tech stuff. And that is Apple's new Apple Watch Series 7. So we know that, if you follow the news at all, then you probably, the tech news in particular, you probably heard folks talking about how the rumors are all wrong and it wasn't what we thought it was going to be, and it's this and it's that and it's not this and it's not that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, in any case, the new Apple Watch Series 7 is here, and it really doesn't have a whole lot of new stuff. It's great for folks who need who are in kind of more rough activities, because they've improved upon the scratch and crack resistance of the device. And the screen is a bit bigger. But for our purposes here, as kind of fans of the quantified self, I'm really excited that it features, Apple is coming with a number, 33% faster charging, which means it can get 8 hours of battery life in, now I'm forgetting.
I think they said you could charge it for 8 minutes and it will get you enough to sleep track through the night.
There you go.
It was really, it was very low.
8 hours for 8 minutes. Yeah. Which is really impressive. You could be in the shower, have your watch on the charger. And then by the time you get out of the shower and sort of get everything done, your watch could be next to fully charged. So finally, if you had some kind of anxiety in the past about wearing your watch overnight and then using it, this is great. I'm curious. We talked on Clockwise yesterday a little bit about the Apple Watch, and one of our guests mentioned that she doesn't really wear her Apple Watch. I do wear mine all the time, but I don't use it for sleep tracking, and there are a couple reasons why. One, I've got this fantastic. It's called the Sleep Tracker by Beautyrest, and it's these two little kind of pucks that you put underneath the mattress, one for you and one for another person who sleeps in your bed. And it will track all of the heart stuff, all of the respiration stuff, all of that. And then I get an email each day with my information. And it's very good at what it does. So I already have kind of a purpose-built sleep tracker. But the other reason I don't is because I don't, and this is embarrassing, but like I just haven't, it hasn't been enough of something that I want to do for me to figure out how to do this. So I have to admit that I don't know how to turn off the thing that makes my watch the sort of default option for being the alarm in the morning. I do not wake up to that little buzz alarm on my watch. This is like a silent alarm where it just buzzes you and keeps buzzing until you wake up. I don't wake up to that. So I can't wear my watch at night because it defaults to the watch being the alarm. And then I don't hear my alarm and I don't wake up until, my body's ready to. So those are two reasons why I am not like big on the sleep tracking for it. But I think for folks who are, this ability to charge it super quickly is great. And Apple has already done a good job in the current versions of watchOS and iOS, and will continue to in the next versions of watchOS and iOS, give you notifications saying, hey, you should pop your watch on your charger for X amount of time before you go to bed if you want to do the sleep tracking. Do you do sleep tracking with yours, or do you know anybody who does? And if you don't, or if you do, I'm curious to hear kind of your reasoning for why.
I don't use it for myself. And I think the main reason for me is just, I don't like wearing a watch while I sleep. I think it's weird and I find it uncomfortable. Like I wear a watch all day. I wear my Apple Watch literally, all day from the moment I get up, basically to the moment I go to bed. And as such, I've got like that great, like watch tan line. And sometimes your skin, like I feel like I want like a short break. So my skin remembers like, oh, this is what it feels like to not wear a watch. Right. Like I just feel uncomfortable wearing it all night. It's just, that's what it comes down to for me. And some of it is also, I just don't like the idea of like having this electronics thing that I might hit or, might, I don't know, accidentally trigger something by mistake. So I think the idea of having something built into lights. Yeah, exactly. Like I just don't want to deal with that. So I like the idea of something like you described much more where it's like integrated with your bed, right? That seems like it would make a lot more sense to like have something there, but I can understand why Apple's been pushing for it because it's the most personal tech you have with you. And it does, I think there is some sort of like really basic sleep tracking if you don't use the Apple Watch, I think, but basically just depending on like when you last used your phone and when you pick your phone up in the morning and it's like, oh, you got 7 hours of sleep. I was like, well, did I, or did I just sort of lie awake and not look at my phone for 7 hours? So I don't know a lot of people who use the sleep tracking aspect. And I think part of it was certainly the charge. Like if you're going to charge it, you're going to charge it overnight when you don't need to be wearing it. So I think this may encourage some people to do it a little bit more, but I still feel like it's one of those features that it's not one that's gotten as much attention, I think. So I think there are probably not a lot of people who are like, oh, I didn't even know it could do sleep tracking. Right. So, I think that this will be an opportunity for more folks to check that out if they end up upgrading. But I mean, the Series 6 does do sleep tracking if you want to. And the couple of times when I wore it to try it, I compared it to the sleep tracker underneath my mattress, and they were near the same. So using either as the sort of control, they both matched up.
And then this next piece was actually specific to you because I remember you talking not too long ago about some troubles with the Apple Watch and its ability to recognize fitness, to recognize activity, and to sort of track your activity over time. Can you tell us a little bit about the issues that you ran into before we talk about this?
I've been meaning to put together a post on this for Six Colors, the site where I write, and I just haven't had a chance to sort of go through it. But they came up when I was on vacation recently, and my wife and I went on a bike ride, and we, tried to very dutifully start our cycling workouts, and then, we got to our halfway point, right? Like we rode, an hour, and we stopped, and we compared notes, and I had like 46 minutes of exercise and my wife had like 6. And we're like, what is going on here? We just biked the same route. I understand there are some differences between like who's in better shape, et cetera, but it seemed like such a huge disparity that I was like, this seems odd. And so I was trying to sort of put together some thoughts about that and why that might be the case and factors that could affect it. And I've certainly gone through a lot of the different possibilities of like, all right, can we reset your watch? Can we recalibrate your watch? Can we figure out ways that sort of like make this work better? Or at least test hypotheses about why is this not working as well as it seems like it should be? Is it working as well? Is this accurately measuring something that is just, doesn't happen to apply in this case? Like it wasn't exercise minutes or whatever. So I think it was sort of the sort of pushing back against this idea of the exercise minutes, especially as a bit of a black box where Apple's concerned, right? It's giving you these minutes, which are ostensibly based on how hard you're working, right? The equivalent of a brisk walk, they say, but it doesn't really tell you. And there are exercises where if you do certain types of workouts, for example, yoga, not a workout that always raises your heart rate, but the yoga workout will give you credit for each minute that you do yoga, regardless of what your heart rate is. And so it feels like, well, what is the incentive for me to accurately track my workouts if it feels like in these cases, it's giving me workout credit for stuff that doesn't raise my heart rate, but here it isn't giving me stuff that does raise my heart rate. So just sort of getting into the frustration with that. And I was interested to see that they had announced a couple new refinements to the cycling workouts in watchOS 8, including the ability to actively or automatically pause and resume your workouts, which does seem really beneficial.
That I am very excited about. My partner and I went on I think it was like 18-mile hike. I think it was just last weekend. And one thing that we did is when we would sit down for a little water break or snack break or what have you, we would pause our workouts. And then inevitably, every single time, one of us would have to remind the other person, resume your workout as we kind of carried on the trail. And so when I saw that they were enabling a new feature that will automatically resume, I was very happy about that because he and I were both complaining about the fact that we definitely lost like 250 feet.
Right. They've done that. They've done it for. It's been a running thing for a while for outdoor runs. They've had that, but they haven't had it for cycling. I don't know if they're adding it for hiking, but hiking's so weird too, right? Because like you're working a lot, but like the stuff that it's measuring is often different from like you might just be walking for parts of that time, but then you might be climbing for other parts of that time, right? So how do you factor in? Is it heart rate? Is it distance? Is it altitude? Like, there's a lot of interesting questions about like what is it actually measuring here?
One of the things I was pleased to see is that it used, I didn't realize, there are lots of places along this huge, it's Point Reyes National Seashore, and lots of places along the mountain and hills and trails that don't have cellular service. And despite not having cellular service, as long as you're in a clear area, you've got GPS. And so it was tracking our route along the map that whole time. So it was really cool to afterward be able to see kind of what our trail actually looked like, because we ended up taking a wrong turn at one point and went out towards the coast. And so we could see, that's where we went wrong. We were supposed to go back this way. But it was just kind of neat having that. So even if you're not able to track things perfectly, it is nice to have that information kind of on a base level, and then knowing the calorie burn of the situation can be helpful in making sure that you properly replenish yourself and get that going. Because the next day, I had eaten enough, but I don't think my partner did. And so he was just out of commission the whole next day. I was like, well, you could stand to eat some more food because you just destroyed yourself yesterday. And yeah, so that's that. I did want to, there's a great article from 9to5Mac that talks about how to, this is one way to potentially fix this, but as we've talked about before, there's also a certain level of looking into the sexism of the situation, because this does seem to happen more often to women than it does to men with their Apple Watch fitness data. But one thing that we know you can try is resetting your fitness calibration. And so you basically go into the Apple Watch app, you scroll down and choose My Watch in the bottom left corner, tap privacy, and then tap reset fitness calibration data, at which point then you need to go outside and do a 20-minute walk or run while in an area that has GPS reception. Upon doing that, it is supposed to reset that fitness calibration data and kind of start you over with fresh data. So if you are noticing differences in what you would expect versus what's happening, that is a great way to kind of try something. It's a troubleshooting step. All right. Up next, we've got some more about Apple before we head into some updates for gadgets, gizmos, etc. All right. First, I wanted to talk about this great article from The Verge, where it's entitled "A Short History of Every time Apple CEO Tim Cook praised augmented reality." So I love this because it is. I've talked a lot about on different shows about how because I used to cover his financial calls, Apple's financial calls, and AR almost always came up at some point. And so I used to talk a lot about how Tim Cook loved to talk about AR, but actually seeing it laid out in front of us was really cool. It goes all the way back. This is an article from Kim Lyons over on The Verge. It goes all the way back to July 2016, where Cook just said, AR can be really great. We have been and continue to invest a lot in this. We are high on AR for the long run. We think there's great things for customers and a great commercial opportunity. The number one thing is to make sure our products work well with other developers, kind of products like Pokemon. Of course, he did say Pokemans. That's why you see so many iPhones in the wild chasing Pokemon. All the way up to today. By today, I don't mean the very specific today, but just now, where Cook spoke with YouTuber iJustine and really, again, is just like laying it heavy about AR. I'm so excited about AR. I think AR is one of these very few profound technologies that we will look back on one day and go, how did we live our lives without it? And so right now you can experience it in thousands of ways using your iPad or your iPhone, but of course, those will get better and better over time. It's already a great way to shop. I'm paraphrasing now. It, of course, enhances the learning process. And then Cook says, I can't wait for it to be even more important in collaboration and so forth. So I'm AR fan number one. I think it's that big. Yeah. So we've heard some rumors about Apple's interest in AR hardware wise. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Apple's AR plans, maybe?
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke, right? This is the point where, like, is there so much smoke that there must be a fire somewhere? There's been tons of rumors about Apple working on a variety of different AR, VR, mixed reality devices of some kind. Nobody knows exactly what the deal is with that, but the sort of current thinking is that there's a larger sort of developer-focused item that might be showing up as early as next year. And this is sort of all on a path towards getting us to like sort of augmented reality glasses that are sort of lightweight that people would wear, that would be much more everyday usage sort of devices. And we've obviously seen a bunch of stuff that Apple has put into on AR on the hardware and software side on some of its devices, like the iPhone and the iPad, integrating things like the LiDAR sensors, putting better cameras in, optimizing a lot of their software and their hardware pipelines to focus on augmented reality. So it does seem to be something they're investing a lot in laying the groundwork for. But it's always been something that, at least to me, has felt kind of incomplete, because the experience you get right now from AR it's much more like looking through a window, right? Like you hold up your phone or you hold up your iPad and you're peering through a window into this voluminous space that exists somehow beyond that. And that is cool, but at the same time, in the same way that if you were like, oh, there's a really cool house, let me look in the window of this house. You're not in the house, right? You're not experiencing this in the way that I think the sort of platonic ideal of it might be. So what you want is to be immersed in it, to be enveloped in it in a way that I think the sort of thinking is, well, if there's a complementary device like glasses, where it's like everything I see is now passed through the filter of this augmented reality, and I can see both real and digital virtual constructs in the same space, then perhaps that opens up a lot more possibility for what AR can offer. And I think it's clear that Apple is working towards some sort of device that will really enhance the experience of AR, and that it wants to get all of its developers and users comfortable with the idea of using this on its current devices before being able to come out and say, look, we've got a whole new device and a whole new category that we think is going to change a lot. And you already know so much about what we can do with AR, but here, let's show you AR the way that it's meant to be experienced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited about this. And I think that it's odd because it's something that kind of keeps me from being too excited about new phones when they come out. Even the foldable phones are kind of to me, because I really, to be like Tim in this way, I really do think that the future is AR. I think that this idea of having an endless size of screen or an endless number of screens that I can pull up in front of my vision is so much more interesting than a phone that can fold in half or a phone that sort of rolls out or whatever that might be. There's so much more freedom in having that kind of screen. And then also, as Cook talks about, because I think there are times where he talks about augmented reality on its own. And then there are times when he talks about augmented reality in comparison to virtual reality.
Right.
And is very clear kind of about the pros and cons. And so whenever it comes to talking about the two, he talks about the pros of augmented reality being the potential increase in connection and collaboration and ability to enhance our conversations, enhance the knowledge that we have at our command, versus VR, where you really do sort of lock yourself off from others, except for the people that are in the virtual space with you. And so, I go back and forth on that because I've noticed that for me with my Apple Watch, with folks who aren't super familiar with the Apple Watch, and sometimes with older folks, and I only say it in this case because I do think that it is a sort of gestural language that is it's a failure to communicate in a gestural language, or a difference in communication. The translations are different for younger folks versus older folks, where you used to look at your watch because you were running late and you wanted to check to make sure that you were going to get to the next place. And so I've noticed, and I try to be careful not to, if I get a notification on my watch, I do my best to not go, whoop. And for people who are listening, I'm lifting my hand to look at my watch, because with people, with friends and family that are not, sort of front of mind with a smartwatch, they're going, oh, do you need to get going? Are you running behind, or, whatever it happens to be related to time. And I go, oh, no, it's not that. I was just getting notified that Henry ran in front of the security camera, and there's, a little photo on my watch to show me. And so I think that I do have a concern that the glasses or the headset is going to be a little bit the same way. That when you're wearing those, will there be some folks who are kind of skeptical, watching your eyes and going, are you paying attention to this conversation we're having right now? Or are you looking at your Twitter feed? So I
think that's a real question. I think, and Apple's going to have to come up with a good explanation of why that's not going to be the case. Because certainly we all have experiences now, right, where it's like, if you are talking to somebody and they're looking at their phone, you definitely feel like, I do not have your full attention. You are distracted. You think that whatever is going on that phone may be more interesting than the conversation we're having. And that's the exact sort of gestural language you're talking about, I think, when it comes to like looking at your watch too, right? There's a lot of places where that signal of like, oh, I look at my watch as like, I'm thinking like, how much longer do I have to be here? Right. Like, and people are going to take away from that the idea like, oh, I'm sorry. Are you bored? Like, are you looking to escape? And there is a big question of like, when you have these displays that are always in front of you and you can access anything in the internet and you can look at all this different stuff, what will that mean for our attention? What will that mean for our interactions with people in the real world as well? Because I think it's true that it holds a great possibility for enhancing interactions and sort of opening up these possibilities, but it's a double-edged sword, like so much technology, where it could also mean we are becoming more disconnected, right? Like in the same way that Apple's had to mediate more recently things like, adding like screen time and adding notification summaries in iOS 15 to say like, we realize there are many distractions put upon you by technology. How do we use this technology to sort of let you manage that more easily? And if there's going from that to something where it's always in front of you, it is going to be a situation where you're like, well, what tools are you giving me to manage this so I am not falling into that trap of always looking at the screens that are in front of me?
Yep. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with in that aspect and how society then responds to it. Because we talked last week about Facebook's Ray-Ban stories by Facebook or something like that. And having that discrete camera built into the lenses. And so we're going to start to see even more of those than we have already. And then next step will be what we see from kind of the big companies. And so it's an interesting time as we start to get there. But hearing Tim Cook continue to talk about his absolute bullishness for AR is really interesting. And I liked having that all laid out there. You should go read the article for the whole picture. The other thing I wanted to talk about from Apple is a really cool thing. It's a simple thing. And it is that Apple kind of, it wasn't super stealthy, but sort of stealthily made an announcement of a new Apple wallet so Apple, ever since it introduced MagSafe technology to the iPhone, they introduced a wallet that could snap to the back of the iPhone and you could put some cards in it and then it would be there. They introduced a new leather wallet that has MagSafe technology. And the cool thing about it is not the leather wallet itself. That's okay. Although it does come in green and I definitely bought a green one. It is that it has a new feature where if the wallet is detached from the iPhone, you can use Find My to go back to the last location where it was attached. So essentially, if you're out and about and somehow the wallet becomes detached, at that point, it will know, hey, your wallet is detached, and you can then use GPS to go back to that spot and find, hopefully, your wallet. So whenever they first announced this, that it would work with the Find My wallet, with the Find My network, I thought it was an actual sort of AirTag built into the wallet. And so I got really excited because the AirTag technology is a little bit different for folks who don't know, where you can do precise location finding. It has a little chip inside and there's another chip on your phone. And together, those chips can kind of communicate with one another and give you, within centimeters, the location of your device. And so it shows this nice little notification and animation on your phone and helps you kind of move around the phone as you try to find that AirTag. So I thought, oh, that's really cool. That's going to be built into the wallet now. It's not quite that. It is just when that becomes detached, it marks it. So it's going to be a little bit like how right now Maps will mark the location of your parked car if you use CarPlay or you have a Bluetooth connected vehicle. So I did pick up one of these wallets. I had been holding out on getting one because I was using some other things, but I've slowly but surely started to just carry my phone and a few cards with me. And so I'm really interested to give this a try and see how it works with Find My. And if it's an annoying thing or if it's going to be, because I would be annoyed if I undid it myself, put it in my bag, and then, moved away from it, is it going to start bugging me about it?
Right,
I don't know.
right.
So
Yeah,
we'll have
in
to
theory,
see.
I wonder too if this is going to be available to basically anybody who makes either a third-party wallet for MagSafe or some of the other third-party options. Like there are some battery chargers and stuff. Part of me feels like I don't want to lose any of that stuff if I had it. So maybe you should still alert me like, oh, I left my battery pack at a friend's house, or it fell out of my pocket at the movie theater or something like that. I think it seems if you can do it for the wallet, you might as well do it for anything that can attach via MagSafe or any sort of accessory.
And I'm running the beta right now. And when I launch Find My, if I go to items and I tap the plus button in the top right corner of the items list, there are 4 options: share my location, add MagSafe accessory, add AirTag, or add other item. So in theory, I wonder if I did. I mean, I don't have it near me, or else I would slap it on. I've got that Apple's MagSafe charger. I wonder if that would work with it. Now, oddly enough, I don't understand why this is the case, but for some reason, as The Verge pointed out in that piece, the clear MagSafe case does not work with this feature. And I have no idea why. I don't understand what's different about the clear case.
Does the clear case has those like little white markings on them where the MagSafe connector is? I don't know if that causes some sort of intermediation where it gets confused about disconnecting from the case rather than from the phone. I don't know. That's totally supposition on my part. It does seem a little strange that it affects that and not some of the other cases, for example. But I don't use the wallet. I don't have one of those. I use a third-party case, so I'm not kind of a non-starter for me. But yeah, it's an interesting feature.
Yeah, and they also, when they show it, it's never in a case itself. When they're showing the new wallet, they're showing it attached directly to the phone. So I'd be kind of bummed if I had to take off my actual Apple-made case, the non-clear version, and that would be the only way to attach it. So we'll see. Like I said, I've ordered one. When I get it, I'll be giving it some tests to see how it works and how this Find My functionality works with it. I do have Belkin makes some headphones, they're earphones, and they support Apple's Find My network. It's got the logo on it and everything. And so I connected those to my Find My app, and that it does that through Bluetooth, and it can then play a sound on the Belkin case that the true wireless earbuds are in. So I have had some luck with third-party devices. So I'm hopeful that a first-party device works better than the third-party one does. That only makes sense. All right. Up next, we're going to talk about some gadgets and gizmos and new updates there before we talk to Dan about his smart home setup. All right, let's get into the gadgets and gizmos for this week. The first thing is Nintendo made an announcement I think had a lot of people happy. At least that's what I saw on Twitter. People were pumped that the Nintendo Switch has been updated to give Bluetooth audio connections, or to support Bluetooth audio connections for the Switch. So that means you can connect some wireless Bluetooth headphones or earbuds and use those whenever you are playing your Switch, which I think is going to improve the relationships of many a person, as well as give folks on, buses and tractors and boats and other things where there are multiple people.
Right. Yeah.
All the places you play your Switch on a car, in a house, playing while
with a mouse,
standing over a mouse,
with a box in a box. Yeah.
And so that means that you could even use your AirPods, that have Bluetooth, which I guess I'm surprised that this wasn't already featured. Do you know much about the Switch itself? Does it have a headphone jack?
Yeah, it does. I have a Switch, and this was a frustration for a long time. And I can think of a lot of examples. Like sometimes, for example, my wife and I would be sitting on the couch, and one of us would want to play a game, and the other one was doing something else. And it was frustrating to try and play a game where the music was distracting or something to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
On my Xbox, for example, I can plug in headphones to the controller and listen there, and I don't have to bother anybody about it. But that wasn't really an option on the Switch. So having the ability to do Bluetooth on that as well is really nice, because it means that you could have somebody playing on TV and they could still enjoy the audio without having to have like a super long cable running over to the Switch. And it's also nice when you're out and about, because I went down on vacation a few weeks ago or a couple months ago to the beach, and I brought my Switch to play, and I had to dig out a pair of non-Bluetooth headphones. Like, fortunately, I had packed in order to find one. And then you've got the cable everywhere, and it's like, this is a technology device from the 2010s/2020s. Why is it not support wireless headphones? And I believe everybody knew that Bluetooth was in there. Like, there was a Bluetooth chip for doing some of the other wireless communication stuff. So it seemed weird that it wouldn't support Bluetooth audio. And I think everybody's glad to have that now. I haven't gotten a chance to test it myself, but I'm very happy that it's an option.
Yeah. I think this is great. And for anybody out there that, you did have those situations where I just want to play on the Switch and I can't because it's going to be annoying for the other person in the room. This is good. And then also make sure you're always wearing your headphones on public transit. That's just a nice thing to do.
It's just nice. It's just nice.
Whether it be in a box, on a mouse, in a house, etc. It's nice to be nice. All right, Dan, I figured out the TV that you are going to put in your lighthouse. That was a very specific inside joke that just rolled out of my brain. I didn't even mean, like, it just came to me. I don't know. Anyway, this is the house you're going to put in the box next to the mouse. No, the TV you're going to put in the house. Yeah. It is LG's new,
very complicated,
huge television. Holy moly. It's a wall-size display. It only costs $1.7 million. I mean, no biggie. 8K resolution, 325-inch diagonal, LED direct view TV from LG. I don't know who this is actually for.
Rich people, very rich people.
Very, like, super rich people. $1.7 million for a television?
Micah, I bought a house recently that is far more than my house cost, and is also bigger than my house, I think. So I guess I won't be putting that in my living room anytime soon. That's just a stupid price. I'm annoyed at the price of this television. This is like a concept, right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's for like a very small group of people who want to, like, are already super rich and need that biggest TV. LG and all these companies always do come out with these things, right? Especially when they're showing them off at like CES or whatever. I mean, I remember years ago seeing these gigantic multi-100-inch televisions and just being like, this is just so you can show off you have the technology to do this. It's not because anybody, outside of a very small number of people is going to buy it. And I think it's there also because that stuff eventually trickles down to some of the more reasonable TVs that people might actually buy. So it is a lot like a concept car. It's a great way of thinking about it.
Got it. Yeah. As long if you buy this television, someone out in the world, I need to meet you and we need to have a talk. That's all I'm saying.
We need to watch some TV.
Yeah, exactly. We can talk while we watch some TV. I love there's if we can go to the CNET article and scroll down about halfway through, you'll see hockey on the screen and you'll see what appears to be a person and their child pointing at the screen, and underneath it the caption reads, "Look, Timmy, your inheritance," as they point to the television. It's below that, Kevin, and below that, there we go. Look, Timmy, your inheritance. God, it's also
it's a little terrifying, honestly. It's like it's like a Big Brother thing or something.
Yeah,
it's enormous.
Yeah, I guess if it was in a airport or something,
sure,
that starts to feel more
like a billboard. Yeah,
yeah. In a home, I mean, come on, people.
I think in the home, it reminds me of those stories of the first people who went to see films back in the early 20th century. And they would get terrified at the train coming at them because they thought it was a real train.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like this is what it's like if you're watching hockey on this. I would just constantly be flinching as people shot pucks at me.
When I was a kid, I used to, at night as I was going to bed and falling asleep, the way that I would fall asleep was just to play like an imagination game. And so I would often imagine that I was in a room where the walls were made of light panels that were basically like TVs on all of the walls. And I could put myself in like a savanna desert or, in the rainforest or what have you. And so this, I guess I just have to buy 4 of these. So I guess, no, 6 of them, right? And then
if you're going for floor and ceiling too. That's
all of the walls. No biggie. I'll just scrouge that change up.
I'll talk to 6
Jeffrey
times
Bezos.
1.7, and that will cost you about $10 million.
Yeah. NBD.
Sure.
Anyway, ridiculous TV that I thought we could talk about, and I'm glad we did. Up next, T-Mobile is going to let you know when it's going to say, you know what? You are really, truly, actually connected to that 5G we keep talking about, as opposed to the other 5G that we talk about less, that is not as good as the 5G that we want you to talk about, that is only available in very specific locations, close to very specific towers, close to very specific situations. And yes, we have talked a lot about 5G on the network, not so much on this show. And there are different types of 5G. 5G UC, the UC stands for ultra capacity, is mid-band wave version of 5G. And so that is T-Mobile's faster 5G connection. And so in the next iPhones, and probably in other devices as well, they're rolling out a new logo. So if you look in the top, depending on which screen you're looking at, it might be in the top left corner of the screen or the top right corner of the screen. It will tell you, your cellular provider and what you're currently connected to with your cellular provider. Mine, for example, says AT&T Wi-Fi, and it shows 1, 2, 3 bars. But when I'm out and about, it'll show 5G. Sometimes it will show 5G with a little E next to it. And then sometimes when things are not great, it'll show less than that. T-Mobile is saying, hey, we'll let you know when you're connected to 5G UC with that new logo. So then you can, brag to your friends about that connection. That's pretty much it. Have you been anywhere that has any of these new super fast 5G connections? Are there any in your area?
There probably are. I haven't found any for the millimeter wave, which is the really good 5G, but they're so, like you said, they're so small. The locations are so localized. I don't even know where, because I have AT&T. I'm not even sure where they support this right now. It may not be rolled out anywhere near me, but yeah, I don't quite understand the utility of it. I think that my speeds are pretty good as they are, but apparently it's impressive when you get out there with those millimeter wave things. So I need me some of those millimeter waves.
Indeed. One of these days I'll be able to check it out. All right, let's talk about Polaroid has been making some they take the vintage Polaroid and they add some tech to it without kind of overdoing it. And so they had 2 different cameras that were instant cameras that had some features that made it a little bit more techy. And then they realized that people liked some of the features of one of those cameras and liked some of the features of the other one. So they came out with the Now Plus camera, which does both. So the Now Plus camera has 2 different things, 2 different kind of features. It has autofocus, which was available in one of its other cameras. And then it also has app connectivity, which was available in the other one. They said, we'll just bring it together in this one device. And with it, you can do some really cool stuff like double exposure on the instant film. Yeah, which is really neat. You can also set up, they talked about this at the iPhone event. One of the new features is this sort of profile, camera profile that you can do where you have specific settings that you want to make the photos a little bit more warm or cool or sharp or not sharp. And the same thing applies to this. You can set up different kind of looks, and then you just use a button on the Polaroid camera itself to change to one of those looks. So I really like this. In general, I think, Polaroids have always been super fun. And I can remember as a kid, just it was annoying because I'd run out of film so fast, but I just wanted to take photos with it all the time. You're like, no, I got to buy more film now. Got to save that allowance to get some more film. And now that I sometimes hesitate, and we've talked about it on the show before, adding too much tech to a thing can ruin it. But I feel like Polaroid's done a good job of trying to balance where the technology enhances it without bastardizing it, I guess is the best way to put it, because it enables something like double exposures that you wouldn't get very easily with Polaroid in the past, and autofocus, which is just great. I mean, sometimes you want to just do a blurry photo, but most of the time you want an in-focus photo. And so having that built in is really nice, so that at the very least you can make sure you have that. And then for folks who are watching right now, there are these really interesting lenses that you can install to add some special filters to the photos that you're taking. And they are physical lenses as opposed to digital. So you can get some cool stuff with that. So I love it. I think Polaroid's really a fun, just the idea of taking Polaroids is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's cool. My parents had one growing up, and I remember using it and loving the instant gratification, right? Because the worst thing when you were a kid was like, I had to go get developed. It's like now we all get instant gratification with all our cameras at all times. But I will say at my wedding, one of the things we did was have an instant camera. It wasn't a Polaroid, but same idea. And we had it like available for guests to take pictures with. And those were some of the best pictures from our wedding.
Yes.
Because they're super candid and like lots of fun. And I thought it was just amazing to have that ability to do that. So I love this. I love the way it looks. I love the vintage. It takes me back to like the same one that my folks had. It's very clever. And I like that they're souping it up without making it something that like, you don't need to take advantage of all the souping up things, but like autofocus, that's a thing it's a thing that you probably want, because it's nice to bring like modern technology to a sort of a vintage idea, but it's cool. I like it a lot.
Absolutely. And then the last thing we'll talk about in the gadgets segment is the Sonos has come out with, Sonos is known for audio, and many of you who listen to the show regularly know my feels about Sonos and its issues with supporting customers in a way that I think one should. But with that, Sonos has made some really great soundbars in the past, and they recently announced the second generation of its Beam soundbar. And what's cool about the Sonos Beam is that this was a soundbar made for folks who don't have LG 325-inch TV money. This soundbar is much more price conscious, and it packs in some of the smarts stuff that you might want to kind of have an all-purpose device that sits in front of your television. But what's better about this Sonos is that even though it's identical in terms of its insides, it's got the same tweeters and woofers and all that kind of stuff, but the processor is significantly improved. And what happens with a significantly improved processor is that it can add some of the more modern technologies like Dolby Atmos. So now when you plug it into your TV and you use ARC, or eARC it's called, enhanced ARC, audio return channel, it can decode, Dolby Atmos and do that via Apple Music. It can do that via any of the other Apple or any of the other Ultra HD and Dolby Atmos music services, as well as television that you watch as well. Now, it does say that it has NFC, so that whenever you're kind of setting it up in the beginning with the app, it makes it a little bit easier. I tend to be skeptical of easy setup because I feel like anytime it says easy setup, then it's never easy. But if it just says setup, then it's usually easier.
Right.
Expectational debt. You just can't tell people that's what it's going to be, because then they expect it to be easy. But outside of the NFC, I think this is a really good sort of update to Sonos Beam version 1. And it finally answers the question of why, when I went looking at the Sonos Beam, I was having trouble finding them. Well, that's because the second gen Beam was on the way. Do you use a soundbar for your home theater? Do you use any kind of, multi-speaker setup, or you just television speakers?
Glad that you asked, Micah, because since as you know, I just moved recently, and in my old apartment, I had a vintage, I call it vintage, 1990s era stereo receiver with 2 bookshelf speakers, which I've had since I was a teenager, that my dad gave me. And it was great. I really liked it. I was like, it's fine. Everything, no problem. But when we moved to the new house, I was like, I want to reduce some wire clutter and just sort of I got a little less space to work with where the TV is going to be. So I decided I would get a sound bar. And I am a Sonos fan. I have a bunch of Sonos ones. So I invested in a Sonos Arc, which is the larger sound bar that they make. And I had a couple Sonos Play 1 speakers that were older that I wasn't really using. And I set those up as the rear surround speakers. And I now, for the first time ever, have a surround setup. And it's pretty amazing, I have to say. I was worried, like you said, about the expectational debt, where I was worried, oh, it's been hyped. And this seems could it really be that much better? I mean, can I tell the difference? And the answer is yes. Yes, I can tell the difference. And I'm glad, because it was not cheap to set that up. So I'm glad to see this. Part of me is oh, should I have waited and gotten the Beam instead? But the Arc is a really nice piece of hardware. It's not cheap. And I recommend, holding out for one of those times in the year where maybe you can find a coupon or something. But it really is impressive how well it works, especially with those rear speakers. And you get something that's got the Dolby Atmos or surround sound. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I bet it sounds awesome. The Arc, but as you said, it's if you can swing it, I've heard good things about it for sure. All righty, folks. Now it is time to move on to the part of the show where, when we have guests on, we talk to them about their smart home setup. And Dan is joining us today, Dan Moren. And I am curious, Dan, you occasionally sprinkle in some little bits about your smart home as we work together each week. But let's kind of go through things. I think telling the listeners about kind of, if you have a specific voice assistant that you use for everything, if you have a specific framework that you use, like HomeKit or another one, and then kind of from there, we can get into some of the more nitty gritty details, like if you've had to do third-party stuff to make certain automations work. So tell us about your smart home.
So again, I just moved. So a lot of this has been sort of re-architecting and re-envisioning what I want my smart home setup to be. I have now been, for probably, I think since the HomePod Mini came out, I've been all in on Siri and mostly HomeKit. I used to have an Echo, which I still have. It's just not set up anymore. I've dabbled in Google Assistant from time to time. I've tried them out all at various times. And I think I eventually decided that Siri had gotten to the point where it was competitive enough with what the Echo and the Google Assistant could do. And it integrated so nicely with so many of my other Apple devices that I really wanted to focus on that as much as possible. And my wife can only stand one voice assistant at a time. And so I figured if I have to pick one, I was going to go with Siri, because at least then, we have Siri on our phones, etc. So it sort of has a continuity within it. You don't have to think about, oh my God, who am I talking to right now? So I've got basically a HomePod Mini right now in our kitchen, which is sort of the home hub. I am using HomeKit to control a bunch of different stuff, mostly lights right now. I've played around with some other stuff as well, but I've been a Philips Hue user for many, many years now. I've also recently added in some other smart lights as well. When we had our kitchen redone in the house, I had them put in some Lutron Caséta switches, smart switches.
Ooh, nice.
So I had those installed. So our kitchen and living room, which is like one big space, you can control basically the kitchen lights, which are like recessed lighting, the living room recessed lighting, and the 2 pendants over our peninsula, all available in HomeKit and the Caséta app. So being able to sort of set that up in a bunch of different places has been really nice as well. I do use Homebridge a little bit for a couple different products that aren't compatible out of the box with HomeKit. and most recently managed to pull something out of my smart home setup because it ended up being not as useful as I thought it would be. I had for a long time, a Logitech, what's a Harmony Hub, which I use for controlling my Apple TV and my Xbox. And I determined that with the new setup, so one of the reasons for moving to the Sonos Arc, as we discussed before, is because since it uses eARC and HDMI CEC, it's all controllable with the new Apple TV remote. So I really wanted to get down to being a one remote household. Mm-hmm. That was a big part of my goal. So using the Arc for that let me sort of eliminate the universal remote control aspect. And then I've just got a huge smattering of other stuff because I buy lots of smart home tech that I want to play around with. And sometimes it lasts, sometimes there's stuff where it's like, this is good and I'm going to stick with this. And sometimes there's stuff where it's like, this is more trouble than it's worth, or it's not really adding anything that I want. So I've had a bunch of stuff and I'm still trying to figure out in the new place, like which of this stuff is the stuff that I want to keep and which of it is stuff that maybe I don't need anymore.
I have long recommended, we pronounce it differently, so I don't know who's correct, but I have long recommended the Lutron Caséta devices. And that, like, they are some of the best in terms of their connectivity and the quality of the devices. And I trust their electrical know-how quite a bit in comparison to some of the other ones, where they've got devices where I had a house that the new portion of the home that I lived in, the newer build, the revamp was up to electrical code, which requires a neutral wire, but the older portion of the home did not have the neutral wire. And the cool thing about Caséta is that you can buy the dimmer switches don't require a neutral wire. Right. And they've got enough of the sort of electronics inside to handle all that needs to be handled there, which was very handy. And then there were some places where I had, I just needed to control a fan, for example, and they have switches specific for that. It is one of the best lines, and you may end up spending a little bit more money because you have to buy the hub as well. But in doing that, I just have always found that, especially like in every home I've lived in or rented for a long time, each of the bedrooms almost always has a fan and light combo. And so the lights are like 3 bulbs. So buying 3 smart bulbs and then having to tell people not to flip the switch on the wall so that they stay connected is so silly. But you give the people who don't like smart home stuff a switch on the wall, and at the same time, you get to have your smart home stuff, and suddenly everybody's happy. So in-wall switches, I am such a huge advocate for, because you'll end up saving money on not having to buy more products, and then also saving happiness amongst others who live with you. So critical.
That was a big prerequisite, was having the ability to like not disable the light switches, right? Because that is the most frustrating thing with smart bulbs is, and we have several, and I'm still in an ongoing war at times with my wife where she'll just be like, I'm turning this light off at night. And I'm like, but then I can't turn it on with my voice assistant tomorrow. But she doesn't want to feel like she can't use the switches. And I agree. It's frustrating. So I definitely think that I assume I was pronouncing it wrong. So Caséta, I assume that I love the way they integrate and they don't make the light switches useless, and you can still use the home control for that. And it's been a really nice improvement. So I'm a big fan so far. The only downside is mentioned, you need the hub. And I feel like up here in my office, I have the proliferation of smart home hubs for the Hue lights and the Caséta lights and all this stuff. And it's like, why is there not just one device that can manage all of this for me?
Yes, I agree. One day maybe we'll get that, but I also, for people who are Sonos fans, the app and the devices integrate with Sonos, so you can end up using, if you get the ones that has the little remote, you can use that to control your Sonos devices as well, which is kind of fun. So that is all very interesting, and mostly focusing on Siri as your means of communication through the use of Homebridge. Now, how do you do Homebridge? Do you have it installed on a Mac that you never turn off, or do you have it installed on a Raspberry Pi, or did you buy the Hoobs box, HomeKit out of the box system box that is basically a reskinned Raspberry Pi that has HomeKit out of the box built into it. Homebridge out of the box built into it. What was your method for getting Homebridge running on your home network?
Well, as I am a nerd and thus, I guess, a bit of a masochist when it comes to tech problems, I have it installed on, it's running in a Docker container on my Synology NAS. So I have it running on my network attack storage device and managed basically through the web interface there. It was an interesting experience getting it set up. I will say, having gotten it set up, it's pretty stable. Good. I use the due to the interface redesign they did a year or two ago, where they sort of revamped the whole web interface and made it much more easy to use. I've been pretty pleased with it. So I have a handful of things in there, and it's sort of a set it and forget it situation. I have not run into too many problems where it's like, I need to update plugins or I need to sort of, reinstall stuff or remove stuff. And I had it hacked in a couple different ways for a while. We had a tower fan in our old bedroom that had a remote. And so I bought a connected IR blaster, basically, that you could then hack using Homebridge to work with HomeKit. And that worked pretty well for a while. So it's incredibly versatile, as one of the things I love about it. In fact, I don't worry as much about buying stuff that doesn't work with HomeKit out of the box, because a lot of times I buy stuff and I'm like, there's a Homebridge plugin. Like I very few cases where I found stuff where they haven't made it work. And it makes me wonder why Apple hasn't sort of embraced that a little bit more and said like, well, we know this stuff isn't necessarily up to the Homebridge standards, but it can clearly work together. So we should probably encourage that.
A little bit more of a blessing would be nice. I agree. The only place where Homebridge isn't doing it for me to this day is with Wyze products, because Wyze has a closed off API, and you can take the old Wyze cameras and install a special version of the firmware with RTSP to do that streaming. But the more modern Wyze cameras don't offer that feature. And then I've got the Wyze LiDAR robot vacuum, which I love. But the problem is my partner does not like to have a bunch of different apps that he doesn't use very often on his phone, and then also have accounts signed up for those different things. And so he will always text me, can you start Mr. Sweepy? Can you start Mr. Sweepy? Because it doesn't have an ALEXA integration either right now, or an integration with the Google Assistant. So nothing can actually start the robot except for the app. And that's annoying. I wish that it would. I did
buy one of those Wyze cameras, and I agree. That was one of the frustrations with it, was I could not make it work via HomeKit. I spent a long time trying to find a good security camera for a while that worked with HomeKit, and I was displeased with most of the ones I found. And I eventually went with the Wyze one, which I'm not even using right now, because it was so cheap. Like it was like under $100. And I was like, well, for that, maybe I'll be willing to use a separate app. And I haven't set it up again yet, but that is disappointing.
Yeah, I do use, I really like Wyze's cameras, and I use them outside, like you said, with their own app. I've made that quote unquote sacrifice because I do enjoy those cameras. Eufy has a few cameras that are pretty good.
Yeah, I had a fight with Eufy, which I think I told you about. Like last year, I was trying to work with a couple of the Eufy ones, and like I ended up with either like some bad ones or just something happened to my configuration, and I could never get it to work again.
I think I do remember.
Maybe one of these moments, I'll find a way to salvage that. But I'm not right now. I have to find some other solution.
You're like, I'm not talking to Eufy for a while.
I'm not talking to them anymore for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us go ahead and move on to the last segment of the show, our picks of the week. Dan Moren, tell us about your pick of the week.
So I buy a lot of tech devices, and I try to keep them to a certain degree of minimum in terms of not having too many devices that do the same thing. So for years, I've been a Kindle user. I've had a couple different Kindle Paperwhites. I generally like it a lot, but recently I was thinking I wanted to get away from the Amazon ecosystem a little bit, or at least have the option to buy my ebooks from somewhere else. And so I saw a great review of the Kobo Libra H20 from my colleague Jason Snell, who writes with me at Six Colors. And I thought, oh man, it sounds pretty good. Like it's lightweight. It's kind of parallels the Kindle Oasis with the physical buttons on the side and stuff. And it's like, all right, I saw on sale one day for 20, $30 off. I was like, I'll take a flyer on that. So I bought one, and it turned out I really love it. It's a super well-designed piece of hardware. It's waterproof. It's got physical buttons. I think the typography on it is actually much, much better than my Kindle. Like, I enjoy reading on it much more. It's got a backlight that adapts and does like different tones at different times of day. So you don't have just like a blue backlight, but you have like a warmer backlight at night. It has integration with Overdrive, the library system. So you like, rather than having to jump through some hoops to get a book on there, it's actually pretty easy to just check out books almost on the device itself. All in all, I've been extremely pleased with it. Very lightweight. And I feel weird because I now have 2 ebook readers on my nightstand. And sometimes I have to remember which book I'm reading on what. But overall, for the amount that I paid for it, and even at its full price, $170, like, I think it's a great reader. And if, again, I like Amazon just fine, but it's certainly nice to have the ability to not buy stuff through Amazon sometimes.
Yes. I mean, especially, I hate to say it, but I do a lot of my shopping from Amazon. So it is kind of nice to put some things outside of that. And I remember you talking about the Kobo Reader before, and that you had been trying it out. So I'm glad to hear that it's working out for you. It's a different concept from the Kindle. Excuse me, I shouldn't say different concept entirely, but a different style and a different way of doing things. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. And some of my reticence sometimes comes from being a writer as well, and having dealt with Amazon. It's like, I just feel like there needs to be more options, right? There's nothing wrong with buying your ebooks from Amazon, but there should be more places you can buy them and more competition. And I like the idea of having different devices so I can sort of pick and choose.
Agreed. Well, speaking of different devices that can look at ebooks, right now I am testing out a device. So Leo Laporte some folks are going, ooh, I wonder what this is going to be. Leo Laporte purchased this device a while back, and I've been eyeballing it, kind of going to the website, putting it in the cart, and then going, I don't really need it. And then going back, doing it again. I don't really need it. And so I messaged him and I said, hey, what do you think about this? Are you still like, is it still of interest to you? And he said that he, liked it or whatever. And he's like, why don't you just borrow mine for a little while, give it a test and see if it's something that you'd want to get, then you can get it. And I thought, that is a great idea. Thank you so much. So the other day I went into the studio for the Apple event, and he handed over his Remarkable 2 tablet. Remarkable is a company that makes a really cool e-ink tablet. And you can see there's a little pencil there on the side, and it is just an all-purpose notebook that you can use to take notes, but it also will display PDFs and ebooks. And so you can annotate things, you can create notebooks. And what I'm going to do here is create a quick sheet. And so now I've got this page, and what's super cool is that you download apps for your Mac, for your iPhone, for your Android device, for these different devices, and it syncs your all of the text that you're typing here to those devices as well. And so that is available everywhere. And then with OCR, you can like take those notes and paste them in places. What I think is very neat about this, and I didn't know that this was a feature, is that on top of having different pens and marker choices, so again, I'm showing on screen, there's like a ballpoint pen, there's a fine liner, a marker, a pencil, a mechanical pencil, a paintbrush, a highlighter, and a calligraphy pen. And they use pressure and angle to determine how those ones write. Along with that, there's also a layers feature. So what you can do is import a PDF or some other thing to the page. Maybe it's PowerPoint presentation from your professor, and drop that on the back layer and then write on the top of it with your own notes. And the whole time you're not, accidentally messing up the actual document itself. There are options to convert what you've written to text and send it. You can send it by email as a PDF or other files. And then there's even an option for screen sharing, which will let you essentially use your Remarkable as a device that, as like a stylus device that you can then write on the screen. So this will be great for teachers in particular, other folks who are kind of trying to present something and show certain things. It does landscape and portrait mode and pretty much an infinite number of documents. It does have a certain storage capacity, but I've not run into any issues yet just playing around with it. You can create folders, you can create notebooks. And so it's just an all-purpose writing tablet that does it feels close to writing. The refresh rate is really good, but as an e-ink display, of course, it's not going to be as good as refresh rates of like an Apple Pencil paired with an iPad. And the Wacom tablet, it won't necessarily be as good as that. That said, I've been very impressed with it so far. I will say that in early days, it still doesn't beat writing with a fountain pen on some paper. And that's kind of what I was hoping to, because what I do now is if I'm taking notes, I will take photos of my notes afterward to make digital versions of them in case I need to get them and search them using OCR. And so I just wanted something. I thought, oh, what if I just take the notes in this thing and it automatically does the OCR? I can search for them as I need to and have them synced everywhere. So it's early days yet. I haven't used it a whole lot. I like it. I don't love it. But for folks who are looking for a really high quality, high resolution e-ink notebook, essentially, I think that there's hardly a competitor to the Remarkable 2. And we'll have to see what Remarkable comes out with next, because that's what Leo was saying. Might as well just hold on to it till the Remarkable 3 comes out, and then you can buy that one if you want to. So yeah, very cool device.
That is cool.
At $399, it is pretty pricey. And so that's what, continued to keep me from actually making the purchase whenever I was going in for it. As it stands, again, in these early days, I haven't given it a huge try yet. I am falling on the side of not for me. But that could change as I sort of get more into it and use it more frequently and really give it the old college try, as it were. So we'll see. But Remarkable 2 at remarkable.com. All right, folks, that brings us to the end of this episode of Smart Tech Today. If you have questions, feedback, etc., you can email us. It's stt@twit.tv. We keep it simple here. We record new episodes every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. So you can head to twit.tv/live to watch live. But the best way to get the show is by subscribing to it, which you do by going to twit.tv/STT, which stands for Smart Tech Today, and clicking to subscribe in audio or video. You can subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all the places. We try to be in those places where you are looking for our show. If you would like to get all of the shows ad-free and you'd also like to support the network, well, you should check out Club Twit, because for $7 a month, you get every Twit show with no ads. You get access to the exclusive Twit Plus bonus feed, which has content you won't find anywhere else, including an AMA that I did last week with Aunt Pruitt, where I answered lots of questions from our audience members, and also access to the members-only Discord server, where you can hang out and chat with us Twit people, as well as your fellow Club Twit members. If that sounds good to you, head to twit.tv/clubtwit. $7 a month gets you all that good stuff. And it's only going to continue to get better as Aunt Pruitt has taken over the content management of Club Twit. And he has some stuff planned for you. Boy, howdy. It's only going to get better. So hop in there, $7 a month. twit.tv/clubtwit. Dan Moren, I want to thank you for joining me today. If folks want to follow you online and check out all your great work, including your writing and your podcast and all that good stuff, where do they go to do so?
Oh, so many places around the very internet. You can find me on Twitter at dmoren. You can find me over at my website, dmoren.com. That's got links to all my stuff, including my novels, the science fiction Galactic Cold War series, as well as all the variety of podcasts that I host, some of them even with Micah. We do Clockwise together every week. I do The Rebound. I do Biff over the Incomparable. So much stuff. I just can't keep track of it all, Mike. I got to be honest.
I don't blame you. I feel the same way. It's like, oh man, and then sometimes I do this, and sometimes
we've done 3 through podcasts in a row this week, Micah.
We've hung out a lot.
3 days in a row. That's right.
Oh man. Well, you can find me at Micah Sargent on many a social media network, or head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUAHUA.coffee. Where I've got links to the places I am most active online. And yeah, that brings us to the end of the show. This is typically where we say good afternoon to all of our smart assistants. And with that, we will see you next week. Once again, thank you, Dan Moren. We appreciate you. Do you have an iPhone, an Apple Watch, an iPad, or any number of Apple devices? Well, you have got to check out iOS Today with me, Micah Sargent, and Rosemary Orchard. We cover all things iOS and help you get the most out of your devices.